So, shall we officially start?
Go for it.
Pete, don't laugh if I say anything really ridiculous.
So go in the room.
No, it's all right, man. But as long as
So make faces.
if you hear him muttering,
So this is the recordproduction.com interview, and we're at Nick Patrick's studio. What do you call your studio?
Shine Studios.
Shine Studios. Sorry, I should have read the notes first. Should have read the emails first. And was this what you did straight out of school, or?
I left school when I was 17, halfway through my A levels.
Right.
And that it's the only job. This industry is the only. I've never had even a paper round.
No.
It's the only job I've ever had. And you know, from being a runner at Lansdowne, I got you know, a few opportunities to try to get a little bit involved. And then one time, some people came into the studio, and it's almost a cliche. And there was no one to do the session, so I was able to record a bit of, you know, simple overdub with someone. It was actually Jerry Rafferty in those days, and it was just after he'd had that huge hit for his next record. And then they booked in his second album, and I was completely ill-equipped to be able to deal with a situation like that. But we sort of staggered through a bit, but I made an appalling mess of it. But they kept a few tracks that I actually recorded. And then I did a bit more recording there, and I went to a studio called Odyssey Studios that was started up. You probably know Wayne Bickerton. Wayne Bickerton.
I owned some of the Vickia that he had in his garage in Rickmansworth when he closed.
Right. Well, he was a client of Lansdowne's, and he was at that time coming out of a very successful period of pop production. Him and a guy called Tony Waddington. They were a team. Wayne started up Odyssey, and I went to work there as an engineer. Right. And we did a few, you know, few good records there. Yeah. A Marvin Gaye album, which was an extraordinary experience. And then I got offered to do a freelance job, and it's what I always really wanted to do. I never really worked for me terribly well being in the studio. So I took that opportunity, which was hard. I mean, it was probably rash. I wasn't anywhere near ready for it. I done nothing of any real. So, but anyhow, I went off, did this job, and I went off to Scotland to do this job in Inverness in this studio, and the record, you know, the band went out with a producer after a week, and it all collapsed. So it was a complete disaster. So I rode around trying to get some gigs, and gradually, you know, I did some things like I worked a little bit, not permanently, but on a freelance basis at Trident Studios. Yeah. That had a lot of foreign clients at the time, French clients. And I did a few of their records. Right. And then I was approached by Paul Brown, you know, who you know. Okay. And I got a job to produce a record with a Spanish group that they'd asked someone else to do. He couldn't do it, and so they proposed me, and reasons best known for themselves, they accepted. Anyhow, I did the record in Spain. We went off to Madrid, recorded it in a studio in Madrid for about 3 or 4 weeks, and it was a huge success. And then another record came along, not from Spain but from France. Same situation. They'd actually asked the same guy, a guy called Zoyce B. Hell. I don't know if you know him. He didn't want to do this French thing, so they accepted me to do it, and that was a real turning point, where I started to get a lot of work in France, mainly with world music artists, because at that time it was a real hotbed for emerging sort of African artists. And there was a guy there who ran a label called Barclay, which is an old established guy called Philippe Constantin, who's dead now, but he was he really developed this world music scene, and his idea, you know, he wanted to make sort of commercial records with these guys from Africa. And there were some amazing people. I mean, people now who are established, Youssou N'Dour, Salif Keita, Maury Kanti, and various others. Yeah. And he signed most of those, and we made records with all those over a period of about 6 years. I did loads of world music things, right up until, well, I don't know, but early 90s. Yeah. We did, well, about mid-90s, we did loads and loads of world music records. And then I became, I never lived in Paris, but I used to go there all the time. And we used to use a studio in Brussels called ICP, which was run by these Americans. And it was a state-of-the-art place with 4 studios, solid state, gear up the I mean, it was amazing for very little money. And I used to work there a lot of time, and the French artists used to come over there, just jump on the train, and we recorded loads of records there.
Right.
And then I came here and I started doing this right at the end of the 90s, what now is sort of considered sort of classical crossover.
Yeah.
The first records were with Russell Watson, and we were very lucky, we had huge success with that. And that's developed, and really over a period, I mean, it's almost 10 years ago I did that first record with Russell, and for the last, I would say, 10 years
How
I've
did
been doing that.
first record come about? Was he a big Yusuf Door fan? Or?
No, it wasn't. You know, it was with Decca.
Yeah.
Now, Decca weren't in the pop business at all. They were a classical label. And they'd got this, they'd been bought Russell, who was with Cliff Richard. Cliff Richard had sort of signed him, and they...
Right.
And they thought, well, you know, this is this young guy, we could do something, maybe a popular classical record.
Yeah.
And they did, I didn't know them. And I can't remember how it came about, but I went for a meeting with them and we talked about it. And he'd already started the record with someone else and it hadn't worked out. So we did 3 tracks. And we just sort of made it up as we went along.
Yeah.
And they liked the 3 tracks, we made the record, and that was it.
Now, presumably a lot of these performers aren't used to being in studios and wearing headphones, and, you know, if you get somebody who's a classical performer and you bring them into an environment they're not used to, how do you go about getting people to put headphones on?
Well,
dealing with all those sorts of
Russell, for example, just, you know, Russell never used headphones really. He does a little bit, but on all the records I've done, I think I've done 6 albums with him now, we've never done the takes with, he's always sung with speakers.
Yeah, and was that something that you decided to do before you walked in the room, or was that just
No,
him saying,
it
I don't
was
want to wear headphones?
It just became apparent very quickly.
Yeah.
He was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And some people, there are a lot of people that...
And you don't have a problem with doing that, presumably?
Not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of my, you know, the main thing, not wanting to digress, but it's so much more important, the level of, you know, the intensity of the performance than the technicality. It's the technicalities are of interest to me, but not to the extent where, you know, if one has to go, the perceived sort of technical advantages of having the vocal completely isolated are of no importance to me personally. But so yeah, I mean it's more of a challenge. But once there's vocals in the track, you know, as long as you didn't have something going on coming out of the speakers that you're not going to use, you no one would ever know. And it helped. You know, it's the only way he could do it at that time. So I never had a problem. But say Catherine Jenkins, she's always used headphones. Right. Always. Never had an issue with it at all.
Sure.
And various other people as well. Russell, really, to be fair, is the only one that really wanted to use speakers. People like Michi and all those people, we used headphones.
Yeah. And they're cool about doing lots of takes and, you know, going through things again and again and...
Yeah.
Trying different
I mean,
things.
Russell will be meticulous about his vocal. I mean, as time goes on now, you know, on his last record, for example, at the last 2 records I've done with him, he sang live with the band. They weren't classical records, and we used the majority of the live vocals.
Really?
Yeah.
And presumably he put a lot of work in before turning up to record.
Yeah, we'd rehearse a lot. Not with the band, but him around the piano.
Yeah.
Yeah, most people were happy with that.
Yeah, so you'd spend some time before recording.
Oh yeah.
Presumably a lot of also choosing repertoire and
the whole repertoire.
Presumably you have a quite hand in
yeah, we would choose. Yeah, I mean repertoire would often be an ongoing discussion, and not all the repertoire. You know, we'd be recording stuff. You know, even well into the after the main stuff was done. You know, before the songs came out and things. So. Yeah, I mean, with Catherine, for example, it was we chose the repertoire and that was it. With various other people, it would be slightly more fluid. With Russell, it was very much more fluid.
So when you're recording the sort of standards and things like the sort of show tunes and things like that, how does it begin? Do you have a programmer you work with to sort of knock together a rough backing track?
No, if we're doing, you mean like the classical things?
Well, no, the more pop things.
Really, the more pop things, yeah.
Like Russell's last.
Yeah. Last record.
Well, the last couple he's done where he's been sort of doing cover versions of things, isn't he?
Oh yeah, no, we with those two.
How does that work?
With those two, we did them both in Los Angeles at Capitol Studios, and we used we had a swing record. It was like a swing kind of Sinatra standard swing record.
Yeah.
And we used an amazing American arranger called George Shilling, who's done 8 albums with Tony Bennett. He's one of those guys right in that sort of genre of music.
Right.
So I went out there, met up with him, chose the songs. We did quite a big demoing process with Russell. So he'd do piano and vocal demos.
Right.
To set the tempo, because some of them were different tempos from the originals. So
yes.
set the tempo, and Russell, and so the guy could hear how he was singing it.
I see. Yeah.
Then, so that was a template. Send that over to him. He'd do the arrangements, the whole lot, strings, rhythm arrangement.
That's all with virtual instruments in a computer, or
no? He just traditional, write it down. Yeah, and then we did 2 days rehearsals, 2 4 or 5 hour sessions with the band, not the orchestra, but the rhythm section. You know, amazing players. And then we went straight in the studio and cut it, and he sang.
And he sang
with the speakers.
Yeah. Oh, after having put the backing track down.
No. While we're doing with the backing tracks.
Yeah.
And we had a little booth, and he would be right in the middle of the studio with 2 Genelecs blasting out.
Wow.
And he had a little mixer. We put a little bit and all this, bit of that, and we recorded all the stuff. And the same with the last record, which was like soul covers.
Right. Yeah.
Again, we used a different arranger for that, but we did it at Capitol, exactly the same situation. Cut all the rhythm tracks live. We did some with huge 20-piece gospel choir, all live in the studio.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, it was awesome. And then bang, the tracks are done.
So you don't ever get into using virtual instruments or sort of string library things, or all these kind of things you can dial up on the computer which sound like orchestras. You don't ever.
Well, I mean, this record we're doing now.
What are you doing now?
Well, it's a young girl called Tasha Bennett.
Right.
And it's in conjunction with the Daily Mail. She's on an advert with the Daily Mail,
right.
and so we're doing a record. It's like a chance record. On this, we actually haven't got the finance to get orchestra, so we're using just small little string pads, but not trying to do. I mean,
who's playing those? Who's programming?
It's a guy called Mike Moran.
Okay.
I'm sure you know. Great keyboard player, and he played on the dates. You know, we cut them all live at Real World. 4-piece rhythm section. Natasha sang, and I would say 80% of the vocals that we're using are the ones that she did in one take live on the record.
And with these kind of tunes, do they cut to a click track, or do they just go for it? Or?
We did about 2 songs to click on that. More of the up-tempo stuff that just needed to settle a little more. Otherwise, we just do it.
Yeah.
It's just completely.
Presumably, that calibre of musicians, they just.
We used to have a fantastic band. Yeah.
And is this straight into Pro Tools?
It was straight into Pro Tools.
96K.
Not 96K.
44.1.
44.1.
Proper old-fashioned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you ever do stuff at higher rates? Or?
Yes. Well, the 2 Russell records in America, we did 96K.
Yeah.
You know, I very nice, but the kind of things, the downside about the vast storage, you know, when you listen to the music, to me it just doesn't really make. I mean, I'd do it if I was making a kind of sonic extravaganza. But if depends what the record's about, really. If it's about the wonderful open space and sonics, and that's as important as the musical content of the record, that's fine. I'd consider that. But if the record is about, which most of the records I'm involved in are, it's more about an artist performance, then I'm less inclined to work at a much, a really high sample rate.
And you're working with the fantastic Pete Schwer.
He's awesome. Yeah.
Hello.
Thank you.
That's right.
Do you always work with an engineer these days? I mean, because you obviously, your route into the biz was through being obviously a fantastic engineer and knowing which way to point the microphones.
I don't think I've engineered a record for quite some time.
Right.
But it depends what. When I say, I mean, a lot of the overdubs and stuff like that take minimal, and if you're just it's minimal engineering stuff on a one microphone type thing. But I haven't mixed a record for ages. But I tell you, the truth is that I stopped recording because the kind of records and artists I work with, one thing I did learn about producing records is that if you've got a happy artist, you've got a happy record. If you can't give your artist the time, you've had it. Doesn't matter how good the record is, you've got a problem. And with a lot of the artists I work with, Russell and son, we spend most of the time playing tennis and out and about.
Yeah.
But that made an invaluable contribution to the record because he's comfortable and it allows everyone. To me, it's a bit like casting a film. It's very much like a film director. If you can get, not all you need to do, but you need to cast your players. And as long as you get people that are going to play, are going to play in the right sort of style, then it's just a question of gentle guidance and choice.
Yeah.
So casting the record is absolutely imperative, and then allowing people to do their thing without, getting on their case too much.
So do you find you need a bit of time to get to know an artist before you then plunge into the serious business of recording vocals?
Not necessarily prior, but once you're in the process, it's vertical in terms of its intensity of that relationship.
Yeah.
It's massive, but it's very, very important, I think, and that's the primary relationship. I've always been, the way I make records is sort of, my sort of, people that I would ever, aspire to in terms of record production are those incredible producers who had a traditional role. The sort of Arif Mardin, the Tom Dowds, the Jerry Wexlers of this world. Those are my producer heroes.
Right.
Much as I like, who I have huge admiration for people like Trevor Horn. I think he's a fantastic artist, that guy. But it's a different style to how I work.
Yes.
No less valid, but different.
Yeah.
But those people that would put the team together, cast the record, an amazing artist, great players, a great, make sure all the songs are right, make sure everything's there. And the record, doesn't totally take care of itself, but the foundations of them, you're always working, 10 rungs up the ladder, rather than worrying about with the guys playing in completely the wrong style, because he's not the right player for the job. So casting is always a big thing for me.
Yeah.